Yes.
Oh, great. Hi everyone. Thank you for being here after what I can imagine is a really long day of lectures. I really appreciate the midweek attendance without attendance credit. I can imagine that since there is no attendance credit, everybody over here is out of their own free will, and I totally appreciate that. So, as Sabrine mentioned, I am a PhD student at the National University of Singapore. And if you are wondering, what is a PhD student doing here, giving a talk? PhD students are generally believed to be strugglers, whiling away their time in the canteen. The PhD program is really long. It can go on forever and ever. So why is a PhD student really talking to us? And believe me, I am more surprised than you are that I'm a PhD student. So, and why do I say that, right? So, I went to Government Law College in Mumbai, and at that time, when I started law school, how many of you all here are in the first and second year? All, okay. Yeah, I think by third and fourth year, people, they just generally become stoic and they know what they want to do. So anyway, coming back to the topic, when I started law school, I wanted to be the Harvey Specter of suits. Okay, I wanted to be Mark Ross of suits. I wanted to be Denny Crane of Boston Legal. Okay, I'm assuming you all are familiar with this. I didn't want to be the Jolawala lawyer. Okay, I didn't want to be the PhD researcher who spent so much time on JNU campus. So I wanted to be the glamorous financial regulation, corporate law kind of a lawyer. And I did my law school, I gave my solicitor's exam, I worked in a law firm for a bit, did financial regulation, and I thought I was on track, to be that glamorous lawyer that we see on TV all the time and with suits and stuff. In 2013, I had to move to Boston because I got married to somebody who was working in Boston, and I ended up getting into a research program at the Harvard Law School. And it was a bit of a, culture shock for me because it wasn't planned. It wasn't in the 10-year plan that I had made for myself. And what I expected to see at the Harvard Law School was similar things, right? That, everybody at Harvard wants to be Harvey Specter at suits. Wants to be, this successful lawyer, the kind that we see in American TV programs, movies, etc. Or they're on the other side of the spectrum, they are the legal aid kinds. So if you all have seen that movie, I've forgotten the name, where I think it was Tom Cruise who fights for the... I think it was Few Good Men? Yeah. The where he fights, the guy, when he fights for the insurance, against the insurance company, the firm. Okay, so, and I thought that, so you'll have one side, on the one side you'll have the lawyer who'll be fighting for the small retail, always, retail guy, and he's always banking on legal aid, doesn't really make much money. Or you will find on the other side of the spectrum, the suits, okay? What I found over there is that actually this is not the only two choices. Actually, what I found over there is that there was humongous diversity in what people ended up doing after being at Harvard Law. So, for example, I found that a lot of people were really interested in academia and research. And that was a bit strange to me because in India, academia, I'm sorry to offend Professor Saxena and Professor Unikrishnan here, I will eventually be an academic hopefully at some point. But in India, the general perception is that academics don't make a lot of money. They are being there because, they've not really done well in practice. And it's not true lawyering. Okay? I found a lot of lawyers who actually had started their own businesses. Some of them related to the law, some of them not related to the law. I found a lot of legal aid clinics within the law school and professional lawyers who used to work for the legal aid clinics and where students used to serve as their assistants. And this completely, changed my mind. Either you're a non-profit Jolawala lawyer or you're a high-flying corporate lawyer. No, there is an entire range of options in between. and I wanted to speak to you about those. After that, what happened is, I got sensitized to these things and I moved back to India because I missed the chaos of India too much. And I moved to Delhi and I took my chances. And at that time, there's this organization called National Institute of Public Finance and Policy. Okay? Obscure, not known to lawyers. It's a think tank that used to work a lot with the Ministry of Finance. Okay, so I said, let me give it a shot. I know financial regulation. These guys are economists. What does RBI do? I know it does banking regulation. But then I realized that actually the purpose of RBI is not banking regulation, it's something else. And how did I learn this? Because I ended up working not with lawyers, but with a group of people that had an entirely different skill set and knowledge base than mine. And when you move from a law firm to working with the government, one culture shock that hits you is the quality of infrastructure. Okay, so I don't know how many of you all are familiar with Delhi, and, but even those who aren't, you all would have seen the North Block and the South Block, right?
Yes,
okay, humongous structures, very grand, larger than life, inspire a lot of pride in India, but they're the worst place to work, okay, because their office organization is so poor, it's not geared towards efficiency. So for example, if you go to the North Block where the Ministry of Finance is located, there is a garden in between and then there are corridors and then there's another corridor and the offices are all around those corridors and there is no direction. For example, there's no room numbering. Okay, so if you know the place, good for you. If you don't, I mean, you just rely on pews. And outside every senior officer's office, you'll know it's a senior officer's office because there will be 5 pews outside. Okay, that's how you identify. Alright. So, in the finance ministry, when I was working along with this think tank, I had a major withdrawal symptoms. I started regretting that why did I ever leave my law firm job? For what? To work in a place where Domino's doesn't deliver, no food place comes, no food delivery app works, the network is jammed half the times, the bathrooms suck, people are just very different from me. And I put up with this for about 45 days to 2 months, and then I went and I complained to my boss in the think tank that this is not what I signed up for. Okay? And I ranted and he heard me quietly. After about 10 minutes of listening to my ranting, he said, point taken, but have you ever thought that the room that you are sitting in and the conversations that you are part of, any other person of your age would have probably given their right hand to be part of those conversations, to be part of those decision-making processes, even as a fly on the wall. And that was when I had my second sort of, intervention on, what do I really want to do with my life and do these, what matters and what doesn't. Okay, does the fact that you have a fancy office, that you're doing what everybody else is doing matter to me as much as probably doing something different and being part of something larger? To me, the latter mattered. Okay, and often we have to decondition ourselves to really understand what do we want as individuals, what are we curious about. Okay, it is not necessary that what you had in mind, in fact, most likely what you had in mind when you started your journey as a law student will be very different from what you become after 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or maybe after some work experience as well. You'll probably change your mind. You'll probably realize that law firms looked great, counsel practice looks really glamorous, general counsel of a company even more glamorous, great life. But is this something that gives you meaning? Do you look forward to going to office? Does a problem keep you awake in the night? Because to my mind, that is the surest sign that that problem is occupying your mind enough for you to work at it and to find a solution eventually. So now, all of this sounds rather idealistic and not so practical, maybe to many of you all. And so I want to say that actually, maybe it wasn't so practical about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, okay? Because at that time it is true, I mean, the kind of remuneration, the kind of opportunities that India offered in the legal services sector to people going to a law firm, to general counsel, to counsel practice, etc., were very much more than the other options. But this is not true anymore. You all are Gen Z, you all are the, what I call the lucky generation. Okay, because the lucky generation, I feel actually even the millennials are also equally lucky, because anybody born in India after 1995 is pretty lucky actually, because they've not had to see the worst of Indian economy. And we fortunately have a lot of opportunities at our, I wouldn't say fingertips, a lot of opportunities that if we look for hard enough, we will get to do what we want without having to compromise the quality of our day, without having to compromise the quality of your lifestyle. Okay, so for example, in the outside of, and I'm here, there's nothing wrong, so I just want to make a disclaimer, there is absolutely nothing wrong if you want to go to a law firm, you want to do general, you want to do counsel practice, nothing wrong with that. Here, but you know enough about that, there are many people who will tell you about that. Here what I'm talking about are the options apart from the three mainstream options, right? So for example, today, you have a lot of choice in terms of, you're a lawyer, okay, law and technology, okay? Something like law and technology did not exist 10 years ago. You have that choice now. For example, if you are interested in, is Google a monopoly? Is Google really misusing our data? Does the law need to intervene, or can this be solved in other ways? Is Uber, how do you regulate Uber drivers, for example? Are they better off as employees? Should labor laws apply to them? All of this, you can see it sits on the periphery of law and technology. It sits on the periphery of labor law and technology. And today you have the choice to actually join a policy think tank that is focused on technology, okay? And it's not a bad paying job at all. I wouldn't say it pays you as much as what an AZB or a band 1 firm pays you, but it doesn't pay you any lesser than a band 2 firm. Okay, so the Googles, the Microsofts, the Ubers in India are building big policy teams. And there's no reason why curious people shouldn't consider that as a viable career option. Okay, some of you may be really good at business development or mass communication. Of course, you are interested in the law, which is why you are pursuing the law. But you do not have to be shy if you're better at business development than you're better at the law. It's perfectly okay. Okay? In that case, I don't know if you all have heard of these institutional arbitration forums such as ICC, SIAC and all. They have business development teams who are basically lawyers, but they are lawyers who know how to get disputes to that particular arbitration institution for adjudication. Okay, so this needs a mix of knowledge of law and marketing and business development. It's perfectly okay. Alright, some of you may be people who are actually very interested. I mean, frankly, when we started out in research, and even today, research in law is largely doctrinal. Which is that if the question is, for example, if the question is, give me a topical question in law right now. Sorry? Game managers. Okay, let's say game managers. How would a legal researcher approach this question? Okay, legal research in India is largely doctrinal. So what would the legal researcher do? The legal researcher says, oh, should gay marriages be legal or illegal? Let me start with the history of the Constitution of India. Okay, then let me go to what Supreme Court has said about it. Okay, then let me see what the Supreme Courts of other countries have said about it. Many of us are actually interested in questions like, is Indian society ready for legalize homosexual marriages, irrespective of what the law says. So for example, the fact that 377 has been struck down, to what extent has it influenced behavior? Many of us are interested in those questions. Okay? Or for example, if you remember, I think it was section 66A of IT Act, which provided for, takedown notices, etc. Right? Shutdown, internet shutdowns, it was for takedown notices. And even after the courts struck it down, a lot of courts were actually entertaining those cases. Many of us are interested in those kind of questions, that to what extent does the law reflect reality? Or how does law influence society? How does the society influence laws? This is not an odd question for a sociologist. This is a perfectly legal research amenable question. It's called the field of law and society. Okay? Where lawyers, legal researchers use the law and use knowledge from another discipline to understand how the law makes sense in the real world. Okay? You can do this through many ways. For example, you can use data. Okay, very powerful. A few weeks ago, many of us believe that CBI is being misused a lot these days. Okay, that the government is disproportionately using CBI to its advantage. CBI, in any case, the law is fuzzy. What can it investigate? What are its powers? What are its responsibilities? It's a bit fuzzy. It is generally accepted fact that the executive government of the day uses CBI to target its political opponents, right? Indian Express, about 2 months ago, ran a fantastic series of stories on to the number of people on whom CBI investigations are going on, which parties do they belong to. Okay? And they did this, I think, over a period of maybe since 2011, although I don't remember. They basically covered 2-3 government terms. Okay? And what they found, okay, so this is using data, right? You are actually finding out, number one, how many CBI investigations have happened over the last 10 years. Number two, who is the main accused in the investigation. Number three, at the time when the accused was being investigated, which political party did he belong to, right? And they found that a disproportionate number of people who are the subject matter of CBI investigation right now belong to the opposition. Alright, compared to when previous governments in power, when also there were people who were investigated and belonged to the opposition, but not to this extent. Okay? Think of PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act. Think of Enforcement Directorate. Okay? We all think PMLA is this virtuous legislation that actually will take care of black money, will take care of KYC, this, that and the other. Legal researchers have actually figured out what is the conviction rate of ED when prosecuting cases under PMLA and other FEMA as well, where ED is the main, prosecutorial agency. And they find that ED has managed to convict less than 0%. So I think it's about less than 1% of the people that it has actually proceeded against. Think about this, extremely impactful. Needs a legal researcher to design this question. I've worked with economists, they can't design this question. Only a legal researcher, believe me, you are being equipped with those skills to ask these questions. Okay? Only a legal researcher will ask this question, and a legal researcher who's curious enough will go behind the data and find answers to these questions. And this in turn, when you do it frequently enough, it becomes an agent of change. Okay? So, I spoke about law and technology, I spoke about law and data. Data is extremely powerful. Just right now, right, Mumbai High Court today, a PIL was filed, okay, on should there be a legal aid fund for people who are before SEBI, before NCLT and before SAT. How would you analyze this question? If you were a judge, how would you analyze this question? Should there be a legal aid fund? There is no right answer, so don't feel shy. If you were a judge and the question before you was, should there be a legal aid fund for people who are being prosecuted by SEBI or who appealed to SAT or who are before the NCLT. What would be your thought process?
Yes, there should be.
What would be the thought process?
Be.
Why?
Basically because maybe they are not able to afford it. Most of them don't even have the knowledge to do it. They are not being, they have no knowledge basically that what to do in front of SEBI if you are taking. So there should be some amount of that should be.
What do you think the opposite argument could be? Yes.
Ma'am, SEBI proceedings are long. It goes on for months, years technically. And
how do you know they are long?
I have read a few things about it.
Like
and there
what?
are a few articles that
I'm sorry, I'm pushing you because I need to give some answers.
A few articles upon that, when especially when the series break out about Harshad Mehta and his.
But don't you think Harshad Mehta was a particularly complicated and big scam? Therefore, it could be wrong. What is the average case take before SEBI? How much? How is this question answerable? Through data. But is this a question that is relevant to a lawyer? Absolutely. Sorry, continue arguing.
There are not many specialized lawyers also who specifically take up SEBI cases, and those who are, they charge high fees.
Yes.
Like
yes.
Ram Jethmalani and his firm charge abundance of rupees just for that very case. So there should be a legal aid.
What can be the argument against legal aid?
The people that SEBI generally prosecutes are very wealthy, and
yes,
that is why.
That is a possible argument against. Do you really need a legal aid? Because legal aid, remember, the money is taxpayer money. Okay, so we can't just constitute a legal aid fund just like that. I mean, when you take away taxpayer money to set up a new legal aid fund, you are probably taking it away from people who are fighting for bail before criminal courts. The money has to come from somewhere, right? Somebody else loses out when you create a new legal aid fund. So keep that in mind. Yes, what are some other arguments? I want arguments against it.
Yeah, so those people who basically are going under trial in city and in these cases, they're very wealthy people, as you said, and they have that particular capital to exhaust even though the trial is going for a long time. So yeah, that they shouldn't be
wealthy. Okay, what else? Anybody else has another point? New point?
Not intelligible differential, like any law, anything that the government makes. Like, on what grounds will you classify that people who are being prosecuted in front of the city should need this fund, and people who are being prosecuted per se for a criminal case in front of the High Court, they should not get this? Like,
she mentioned an intelligible differential. They both mentioned.
Yeah, so unless and until they can actually come up with a logical solution that it's not arbitrarily that someone is being favored, it won't stand anyway.
So are you saying yes or no?
I'm saying no, there shouldn't be a separate fund only for SEBI. How would you justify for not giving for ED or for like if there's a IT proceeding?
I'm saying okay, I'll say even for ED. ED को भी देते हैं, IT को भी देते हैं. Whoever's prosecuted anywhere gets it. What do you say?
Then that's another question, but still the fundamental thing is that how the taxpayers' money has to be used. Like, you know how much legal proceeding pendency is there in India, and how much deficit the government runs, and like the whole budget is coming up, and everything revolves around that. There's always some deficit in the budget. The exchequer has less money than they actually spend. So we have to be very. There has to be some competency and thinking behind where money has to be spent.
Okay. Any other new point? Yes.
One of the purposes of providing legal aid is to provide it to those who are unaware about what's happening to them. Usually in the cases like people already mentioned that the people SEBI is prosecuting are very wealthy, have an accumulated capital to let the proceedings drag on. They also have an equally fair knowledge of what kind of laws they are breaking in order to exercise those loopholes.
I would think that a person who steals, actually, even without reading the law,
not necessarily stealing, but at the same time, people usually have a fair amount of knowledge as to what is legal, what is borderline legal, and what is not.
Okay, so knowledge and wealth, that should be the differential. Okay, one last answer, otherwise I won't be able to move forward. Yes.
So I think there
an extra layer of protection will be added if there is an allocation of fund, and the whole idea of deterrence of a particular crime that would not exist anymore.
But that is true of even people who get legal aid before lower courts, no? If legal aid acts, diminishes deterrence, that's what you're saying, right? That's true of every legal aid. Anyway, so I know I'm in a class of lawyers, so you can totally tell if you're in a class of lawyers. So now, okay, so this question, for example, could we answer better, to the point you mentioned. So I completely agree that there's no reason why somebody who's prosecuted before SEBI should not deserve legal aid, assuming everything else remains the same. Okay? So how do we do this? Maybe one way to think about this is, what is the income segment of the average litigant before SEBI? It is true that on an average, maybe the people who are being prosecuted by SEBI are actually rich people. But how do you know that? Small firms, okay, think of small firms. Think of the average broker in India. Think of the average retail trader in India. A single SEBI order can actually liquidate a small firm. Okay? How do I know this? Because I know the average size of monetary penalties imposed by SEBI, but I don't know what is the average income segment of a litigant before SEBI, for example. I don't know how much time does the average small case take before SEBI. Okay? So all of this question, whether should there be a legal aid fund for apparently rich people, can be better answered with data. It's a perfectly legal question. I don't think you disagree with that.
Yes, unlike economic weaker section, you should only give it to those who are economically weaker. It shouldn't be given to like everyone.
Yeah, but that's
only going through it.
That's right. That's right. But actually, data can be useful even for non-economic questions, right? So, for example, an area of interest of Professor Ravi Saxena, I think, which is that is it true that people who are on the death penalty, on the death row, okay, we all know the failings of criminal procedure in India, right? We know that evidence collection procedures are weak, state capacity is weak, often prosecutorial capacity is extremely high, but defense capacity is weak. Often people who are on the death row have actually used legal aid to defend themselves, and that legal aid hasn't paid for a great lawyer. And people sitting on the death row, who are these people? What income segment does the average death row prisoner belong to? What caste does he belong to? All of these questions actually tell us a lot more about the law than just reading judgments and texts of laws, to be honest. A lot of the judgments in India, I'm sorry to say, are pathetically written. In fact, I would say, you should read it because you're a lawyer and it's part of your training. But I'm sorry to say that they do not enhance, here again you would say, but do you have data? I don't have data for this. But I would expect that a lot of the judgments, at least from my reading, don't really enhance your knowledge, don't really help shape your worldview. There are of course exceptional judges, but I would say that step out of the comfort zone of the average lawyer. Step out of the comfort zone of just reading the text of the law. Step out of the comfort zone of just reading judgments. Because you will not develop your worldview just by reading the text of the law. Just by saying, but Legal Aid Act or whatever says this and therefore there should be. No, it's a bad argument. The Act may say whatever. The Act has been made by parliamentarians. It can be changed any time when the public wants it to be changed. Okay? So, how did I get here? Okay, I got here because I was telling you what are the opportunities available to Gen Z. Okay, so how am I talking? How long have I talking? 5:20. Okay, 5:30 we start. I've been talking for way too long. So so just to sequentially tell you the summary of my talk, in case anybody was sleeping or not paying attention, I started with saying that we all enter law school with a certain perception in mind that I'll be this kind of a lawyer, I'll be that kind of a lawyer. Don't get wedded to that perception. Don't become a prisoner of your own aspirations. Your first 3, 4, 5, I would say your 5 years of law school are there to explore. Okay, explore all options. You all are lucky. You all have many more options that will allow you to lead a kind of a lifestyle that you want. You just have to look. Okay? Don't be scared that, oh, everybody in my class is looking to go for a law firm and that seems like the safe option. Everybody in my class is doing company secretary or chartered accountancy and law seems like a safe option. You guys are intelligent enough, you will figure out a way to make a decent means of living. Follow your curiosity, follow your passion, you will find an opportunity that matches that. Okay? The other thing I wanted to say is, the college will kill me, but it is true that placement is becoming extremely difficult. By the time you all graduate, it is possible that a lot of legal jobs in law firms, etc. are no longer, I mean, the number of law students graduating in India is extremely high. The sector is not growing at that rate. So even if you care a lot about your lifestyle, etc., it may not be a bad idea to consider the unconventional jobs as well. Okay? You just have to step out of your comfort zone. You have 5 years to explore. Just go for it. So yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Do you have questions? Otherwise, I can keep talking.
You said that the judgments in India are given throughout since independence, after independence until now have been pathetic in few parts, like you mentioned during your lecture. I would like to say that what if a person wants to be a judge, how he can counter that particular thing apart from reading the judgments given by the judges, and what are the data, like if you particularly talked about data and how data helps you to study a particular case in a scenario, like SEBI was one of the options you gave, one of the examples you gave. So how can a person like me specifically, coming from a background who, like the family forces you to go for a government job and a government PCSJ is the main aim of the family, and the forces, though I have an interest in that, but the basic reason is that. So how do you think that a person like me should be countering this problem of not giving a pathetic exam, a pathetic judgment, me being in that case?
Okay.
If I may request, if you can introduce also before asking a question, that would be great.
I'm Amrit Singh. I'm from
Sit, don't sit.
I'm from Lucknow, and I'm from I'm done my schooling from City Montessori School. I belong from a particular background. That's basically
great food right now. I've never been there, but I've heard yeah, I really want it. Okay, it's a good question, okay? How do we make sure that we do not become who we despise, right? Maybe, I'm not judging the people who become this way, okay? Because maybe the system makes you this way, right? Maybe there's something else, there are some other compulsions which we don't see when a judge is writing a judgment. One thing that I have found effective, I don't know about everybody else, is writing really helps. Okay, so for example, if you find a judgment that's really badly written and there are obvious arguments against it, formulate your thoughts and write it. Write those arguments. Okay, and I'll tell you an easier way to write. I have my hacks, I'll tell you about those. But once you write them, you will know the weaknesses of your own argument and you will know the strengths of your own argument. Aim to send it to a blog. Guys, there are lots of legal blogs here. They will take well-written pieces. They add to your resume as well. Do not underestimate the power of a well-written article. And once you start doing frequently enough, if you start doing it frequently enough, people will know you for that field. You may think nobody is reading it. You don't know, you don't have data. Okay? So, at the least, it will help you put down your thoughts. So, for example, the demonetization judgment. Okay? Supreme Court said demonetization process was okay, the RBI followed due process, central government followed due process, and so on and so forth. I'm not very angry with that judgment. Anger produces the best right, I believe. I'm not saying I know the best thing, but I'm just saying anger produces really good right. When you feel strongly about something, you can do 2-3 things. One is you can actually have a debate with I'm saying you can have a discussion with your own classmates that are we all thinking the same way or are there some possible counter views? If you still feel strongly, go home, formulate your views and write about it. Now that brings me to the topic of legal writing, and I honestly feel very strongly about this. I'm just going to spend 2 minutes talking about it. A lot of us like to say that simple language, short sentences, linear arguments appeal to people. So yes, to answer your question, when you're angry with a judgment, figure out a way where you can write about why you're angry with the judgment. Send it to a blog. Test yourself. Are your arguments good enough? It is possible that the judgment you read was really good, but you were in a bad mood that day. Right? The more you write and the more you respond, the better you will get at it. Your resume looks better, but I guess that's a secondary consideration. And people will start recognizing you for having a worldview on things. It doesn't have to be the best blog. Start with the, it's okay, start with the normal student blog. There's no shame in doing that. The fact that you actually sat down for 45 minutes and structure your arguments is good enough. Then keep doing it frequently enough. I'm sure that a lot of things make you angry, so you will have enough stuff to write. Right? So and that's how you will, when you become a judge, by then your writing skills would have been sharp enough to not do what you despise. What else? Okay, should we collect questions? Should we go? Because otherwise this can, what time does this have to get over?
By the time you stop answering these questions,
No, then people will start.
half an hour, 20 minutes.
Okay, so let's go this way.
So now I am someone who is very interested in the field of psychology. So how do I connect the field that I am studying right now with what I am interested in? Is there a prospect?
Yeah. So the law and society example that I gave, that's a field that connects law with behavior in society. Okay? It can be psychology, it can be economics, it can be law and society. What else do we connect? I think culture as well. Okay, so psychology, for example, of late has started becoming mainstream with the other social sciences. So economics has developed this whole field of behavioral economics, which is entirely psychology driven. So now you have to be the next Danny Kahneman who will figure out the link between law and psychology. Okay, I can't think of immediate, but I guess if you know.
Without not being a criminologist, I somehow have been aided by some of our colleagues to this group. I would also share some of the content there. They would say that you can do justice to the criminal system, understanding justice system. In terms of, first of all, you understand the psychology of the criminals, and luckily from their perspective you start devising the policies and the laws as well. So certainly criminology is the interface between sociology, psychology and the law.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of it. It's a good one. What else? What else? Yes, I'm going this way, so don't mind.
Are there any resources that you would recommend us, as you told us not to limit ourselves to like judgment reading or just sections like an app? So what would you recommend like law students like us should read to enhance our knowledge and be able to write such arguments that can actually counter the judgments that have already been written by very experienced judges?
So I think these days most legal blogs are area specific, right? So for example, I particularly enjoy reading Gautam Bhatia's blog on it's called Constitutional Law and Philosophy. So if you're interested in constitutional law, it's a damn good blog because it criticizes every judgment that is pronounced by court. So if you want to enhance your critical thinking skills, it's a good blog to follow. If you're interested in other areas of law, so for example, corporate law, I'm afraid the India corporate law blog, I myself am an editor of it, but it doesn't quite manage to do what Gautam Bhatia does with his blog. But that may be because, constitutional Indian legal system, Indian legal education system produces way more constitutional lawyers, way more people interested in the constitution than corporate law. It will get better. But I guess the India corporate law blog is a good blog if you want to follow. I would say don't restrict yourself to, if it's about writing skills and if it is about critical thinking skills, don't restrict yourselves to Indian law blogs. Don't restrict yourself to law blogs. Let me think. There's this guy called Amit Verma. He hosts this podcast called The Seen and the Unseen. He actually conducts writing classes. And I've got excellent feedback from people who've been there that he really teaches you how to do concise writing, how to break down what you're saying, so that even if it is really complex, it can be deciphered by the reader. So look for those kind of opportunities, but in short, It depends what your area of interest is. Find some blogs, etc. that actually write in your area of interest. There are a lot of areas of interest that are not covered. I don't know of any good labor law blog, a good land law blog. I don't know. But maybe then you step into the domain of a little bit of economics, socio-economics, socio-legal. So for example, there's this, if you're really interested in financial regulation, there's this guy called Matt Levine who writes about every single scam that is happening in the United States in the space of finance, and he makes it really funny. He's a lawyer. He makes it really funny, and I think it's a well done blog. So you have to find the blog in your area of interest that will, answer this. Somebody else, the white jacket, and then Sorry, what's your name?
Akash.
Akash. Yeah.
So I was just wondering, you mentioned the infrastructure and the problems related to it in Delhi and other institutions as well. So the idea behind the non-recognition of such unconventional fields related to law, is there a link to that particular infrastructural lacking? And I think should there be more, because aren't we sidelining these unconventional fields because there is no infrastructure or growth possibility there?
Or is it that there's no infrastructure and growth possibility there because enough people are not taking interest? I don't know, it could run both ways, okay? I don't know the answer. You're right, when I started, I was more skeptical about, I'll have to work in a government building. But if the work is interesting enough and if you are curious and passionate enough, it will stop mattering to you after 2 weeks that the bathrooms are not clean. The human mind is capable of adapting to extremely adverse circumstances. Okay, so don't underestimate yourself. You will adjust to new environments if the work is the hook. So, yeah.
So ma'am, as mentioned by you that we should not restrict ourselves to a particular field. I quite often find that law schools do restrict students, like they limit our idea to mooting, ADR. But we are not exposed to areas like policy making wherein law could step in. We could analyze both the social context along with law so that we could come up with things how to better, how to come up with new policies or new laws for better implementation. So how as a law student can we ensure, that you are getting the proper exposure? Because I don't want to honestly rediscover myself at the age of 40. I want to get the exposure and choose the right path.
So, there's no harm rediscovering yourself at the age of 40. To be honest, if you're really sure by the age of 40 what you're doing is the right thing, you're probably missing something. It's going to be a journey. There's never going to be the ultimate destination. And believe me, the journey is more fun. The journey of discovering, constantly knowing who you really are is way more fun than arriving and saying, I've arrived. Okay, think of I call this the Alia Bhatt problem. The Alia Bhatt is really young, she's 27? And she's already achieved so much. And I wonder, doesn't she get bored already? Sab hai, hit movie kar liya, Hollywood jaya, ye sab hai. And I wonder now what? A long life is left ahead. What is she going to do? So arriving is not as much fun as the journey to your second point. But on areas of things that, I think you have to read. Okay, you are in a field where reading is imperative. There is no escape from reading. The internet is at your fingertips. Look for areas of your interest. Be targeted. So, for example, she asked about what should I read to become a more critical thinker. Similarly, for you, it would be if you're interested in public policy, for example, and you think that you are underexposed in your current environment, there's nothing but trial and error that you can do on the internet to find out sources of information that give you a good regular frequency of good reading material on public policy. I'm sorry if it's a very general answer, but that is what trial and error is how I learned. So I don't know any better way.
Okay, so this is not a far-fetched question. This is a problem I've been facing every day. We write research papers, legal research. Can you tell me any tools or how I can, I'm in second year, how can I properly or maybe probably start in the right direction, how to do proper legal research with the help of the resources we have? Because I often feel that everything every time I choose a topic, there are so many things out there already, and if I read something, it will color my opinion on that topic. So how to go with legal research? Because we aren't really taught how to do it. We just do it every day.
Yeah. The how question. I don't know. So can you give me examples of a topic that you're working with?
Like how legalization of marital rape. Like I thought I'd take this topic. So how do I tap onto that creative side where I can find something so that I can actually contribute to the field, because I'll be writing research papers next 3 years.
Okay.
How will I make sense of it?
Okay, so this is, don't judge me for it, but I generally find the best source of information on Twitter. Okay, I am really sorry, but if you spend half the time that you are spending on Instagram, on Twitter, believe me, you'll be a much more enriched person.
But it also depends on what kind of Twitter you're on.
Yeah. I was going to say that. I'm glad you said it. You're going to follow the right kind of people. In my opinion, I know I'm going to get killed. In my opinion, Twitter is the most, real-time and objective source of information if you are following both types of people. Okay? So, don't ever fall into, don't make that mistake of following people who you always agree with. Stupid mistake. Okay, they will not challenge you. So to answer your question, on legalization of marital rape, it's not my area, but I've found some pretty good stuff on Twitter where, number one, the first kind is where they are following the day-to-day hearing before the court. So through that, you are able to follow the counsel's arguments. You know what both sides is arguing. Through that, of course, you get some judge humor, kuch funny incident hua, whatever. Then the second is the academics on Twitter, who post some pretty good papers, the most recent papers on, legalization, on criminalizing marital rape. And I think that's a good way, that's a good place to start. It's no longer the time where, let me start with what the Constitution of India says. No, very boring approach. If Constitution of India was clear, it wouldn't be a research topic at all. If Constitution of India is clear, then probably it is your job to challenge that view if you see that your lived reality is actually very different from what the Constitution of India says. Okay? So I would say, don't start with a conventional way of, as a lawyer, I'm pretty sure you know what the law says. But don't start Constitution of India dekh Supreme Court judgments, no. I would say look at academic papers. Sometimes they have actually applied their mind. Academic papers written by good academics, actually, Professor Ravi Saxena, Professor Krishnan, they have actually spent time on that topic, right? So I would say in academic papers provide they also provide a lot of leads. They normally are full of footnotes, so you can actually then use that to go to new resources, look at unconventional arguments, start that way. Again, trial and error, but it's the best we can do.
So you said that you worked for a good amount of time with the think tanks. How much do they actually contribute to substantive change?
It depends on the think tank, it depends on the government, it depends on the timing.
For example, the one
So I worked on the think tank that actually worked on the insolvency and bankruptcy law. I got lucky, to be really honest. When I moved back, it was this government's first year, and they were in the mood to do some meaningful change. Okay, so a lot of it depends on luck, on timing. When I'm talking about impact, because policy, for those of you who are interested in policy, it's a long game. Okay, it's by the time you actually see real impact, it may take time. I got really lucky, so don't assume that this is going to be the outcome for everybody. But for example, we worked on pretty exciting stuff like how do you make the RBI more accountable for inflation? Okay, sounds pretty esoteric, but it's something that interested me. I learned a lot on the insolvency and bankruptcy code, on setting up IBBI. How do you design a regulator that is responsive, that doesn't become lethargic, and so on and so forth. So I would say that, maybe I'm biased, but I would say that the think tank that I work for, I got lucky and we did some pretty cool things. in policy, there's also, so you can divide policy into three sort of verticals. There's research, where you're only writing academic papers, and that's good enough because when the time is opportune, that academic paper will actually have an outcome in the form of a law. Or you are actually writing the law, which is what Vidhi Center for Law and Policy does. I don't know if you all have heard of it, check it out. Or you're actually participating in operationalization at the ground level. Okay? So you can pick what your interest is and see what works. Yes?
So now when recently when the digital data protection bill came out, the 2022 draft, so a lot of firms like AZB Partners and a lot of notable lawyer advocates were contributed to that draft. So we had, like I had heard a lot of lawyers advocates who were involved in the drafting. Earlier they came out in media, they always said that there should be a better data protection bill. And when that draft came out for the public concern, a lot of business was still seen there, like that gave the government a lot of unrestricted power to the personal data that of the Indians. So when these firms and these advocates had the chance to work with the government, had the chance to draft a better protection bill, yet they somehow I feel that they failed somewhere. So like when they go to work, working with the government, like why is there this shift of opinion or the shift of work that we see? Because they are seeing something else when they come out in media. They have some other things to say, like Indians should have a better data protection. But when they're drafting the same thing for the government, they're giving them the unlimited access and the unlimited power in that.
So number one, just because you're working with the government, it doesn't mean that whatever you say is what the government will do. The government has a prerogative, at least my experience is that when you're working as a think tank with the government has a prerogative to jump each and every piece of paper that you've given them and go ahead exactly with what they want. We've elected them for that. Okay? Now can you judge legal professionals who helped the government do this? I don't know. One argument against it would be, would the data protection bill have been better without their involvement at all? Even if it did not become the best data protection bill ever? I doubt. Okay, so we have to understand that Government of India and government states, they work with civil servants who are generous. Okay, so for example, a person who makes decision in the Ministry of Finance may have actually just come day before yesterday from the Ministry of Petroleum. He has no idea of how the financial sector works. Is the government better off with civil society, think tanks, law firms, consultants working with it? Maybe we don't get the best outcome, but would the outcome be better without their involvement? It's debated. Okay, to my knowledge, the government itself doesn't have enough capacity to do this, and they're always better off with external support, even if it means that on an average, some of the consultants are biased, some of them are not biased, others are ideologically driven, doesn't matter. The average outcome, in my opinion, would not be better without their involvement. Alright, so I don't think we should do that. Yeah.
Like speaking, like you said the word generalization. So like even if things were to be seen as like in a general way, like there at the end of the bill, there is a whole section which says that this amount of penalties to be paid by the companies and
I'm sorry, but I'm not going to get into sections of the data protection law that doesn't exist. Sorry. Are there more general questions?
Like at the end of the draft, there is a whole line saying that even if there is a certain data breach that the firm has to pay a penalty up to ₹40 crores. So like even if there is a startup who has just started a few months back or a year back.
I don't know the answer to your question already, sorry. I'm not going to get into the sections of this. If there are more general questions about approaches, I'm happy to answer, but I don't know much about the data protection bill, so it will in fact deprive everybody else who has a more general questions. Go ahead.
Ma'am, so like specifically talking about me, most of the stuff I write in the realm of legal research, it's mostly descriptive. Like talking about a particular law space, etc.
Yeah.
Now I want to elevate that. I want to really get into the roots of like hypothesis, a proper legal research gap, etc. So what can be my approach when I specifically try to narrow down a hypothesis or like find out?
Read good academic papers. Believe me, as you keep reading them, subconsciously you will develop those skills. There is no one easy way to do it. For example, if your research interests are on, I don't know, I'm blanking out right now, but on things like insider trading, okay? Read good academic papers on insider trading, you will automatically know how to position your stuff. It's not too hard, believe me, it really isn't. It's just about reading stuff that is well written, taking inspiration from that. I don't mean in the sense of plagiarization, but taking inspiration from that in the terms of structure. Think of a good paper that you read. Okay, so in the space of criminalizing marital rape, think of a good academic paper that you read, and think what was about that academic paper that you liked. Did you like that the person was exaggerating? Then maybe that's a writing style that you like, and it's perfectly okay. It's for the reader to then judge, to discount that exaggeration. Okay? Or did you like that it was the arguments were well structured? Then that's something that we need to strive for. Or did you like that they have a lot of citations? I think that's a horrible point to like, but whatever. I mean, if you like it, you like it. Then you need to do much more on citations. So think of a good academic paper and see how you can write something that has a similar structure to that. Okay, I'm going to shift to this zone. Yeah.
Like since you have worked around RBI and all, so is there any particular method that you kept in mind, given that they bring out circulars every second day? So the thing that you might have read 10 days ago becomes obsolete because there's a new circular on it. So this is a problem that I face whenever I'm just searching around somewhere, SEBI or RBI, because there are master circulars. But is there any method that you found useful for yourself?
No.
So
there is no method to that madness. I'm sorry. That's the chaos they love. That's the chaos that keeps them going. That's the chaos that will get them a job after they finish their stint at RBI. Yeah, and yeah, there's no better way to say this. Yeah.
You said by your speech about this that we need to step out of the conventional jobs because they are limited. Being law students, we've seen conventional jobs being taken. We are taught that conventional jobs and placements give you money, and our role models, our brothers or some mentors, are the ones doing those conventional jobs.
Yeah.
So, as a law student, how am I supposed to find those so-called non-conventional jobs which can also pay me?
Right. Fantastic question. How do you go about looking for... So, it's something similar to what somebody asked here, right? If your environment doesn't expose you enough to the unconventional, what do you do so that you don't miss out? And first step would be just to follow, and sorry, the internet is beautiful, okay, it's close to magic. Just to follow the blogs that interest you. See who's writing on those blogs. See whose writings appeal to you. Check out what they have done. How did they get there? So for example, if any of you like Menika Guruswami's work, follow her career trajectory. What did she do to finally become what she is? If any of you all like Umakant Barote, who writes about corporate law work, what is his career trajectory? It may look very different to your brothers and mentors' career trajectories, or it may look similar, in which case maybe just because you do conventional jobs for the first 10 years of your life, it doesn't mean you can't switch. So my sense is that if you follow enough writers on the internet who you think write well, then you identify their career trajectory, you do profiling of them, and then you figure out if that is something that works for you. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Okay, so maybe a PhD doesn't interest you right now. Don't dismiss it. Okay, because what you are right now is not what you will be 3 years hence. Keep following it. Even for the sake of curiosity, interest, keep following it. Maybe it will be of some use today. Maybe you take up a job, a normal conventional job, nothing wrong in it. Normal conventional job immediately after law school. And after 2-3 years, you'll be like, okay, now I think I have enough savings to be able to take some risk. What is the risk that you want to take at that time? Right? So follow those kind of people. If you are interested in entrepreneurship, for example, there's this collective called Agami that actually supports legal entrepreneurs trying to solve problems through technology in the legal space. So for example, beautiful startup called Truckers or something like that. You know what they do? It's amazing. I can't stop talking about it now. You know, trucks that fly across state borders. They are often stopped at the state border in the middle of the night for bribes, for papers. The driver is sleepy, most often not educated, most often belonging to the lowest income segment, and has no idea how to deal with this. It doesn't matter how many times he's crossed that border, because the cops have unlimited power at that point in time. You know what this company does? It has set up a lawyer at the it has actually empaneled a lawyer at the distance of every 50 kilometers with the promise that if a driver, and they've tied up with logistics companies, they sell their product to the logistics companies, that if your drivers get caught or are stopped and they need help, call the empaneled lawyer who's in that region, and they're trying to solve that kind of a problem. Extremely innovative. Similarly, labor laws. There's this other startup which basically just tries to negotiate with employers to make sure there are no strikes. So for example, if a workman is not paid, that particular startup actually just negotiates with employers that if you pay this much to the employee, to the workman, then I'll make sure that they don't come together and strike. Or, you know, so there are very, very innovative things happening. Just keep your eyes and ears open. You will know the right places to follow. Then you follow the person whose idea it is, and see if her career trajectory is something that is of interest to you. Okay. More or less? Okay, do we have time? Yeah.
I actually had a similar question, but I would like to add on that. You said that it is important for us to step out of the box and to be unconventional. And as a person, I'm very interested in criminal law. But when I go back home and I talk to my parents about it, about what stream I should take or whether there is a prospect of me going into criminal law, they're a little hesitant on that. They're like, why do you want to go into that sector? Why not the corporate sector, which could make you financially stable in life? So my question is, so is it worth taking the risk for your passions, or you should like just sit back and be financially stable?
You intern at the criminal lawyer's place. You see what does the job really involve. You see if you have the stomach for it, and then you decide.
Because you're supposed to take a major while you're doing the master's. So
you take criminal law. I mean, if you're asking me, I would have taken criminal law, because very less of what major you took at your law school will influence what you will eventually do. So, no harm. In fact, if there is any time to experiment, it's right now for you. Okay? You won't be able to experiment criminal law 5 years down the line, and then someone said at the age of 40, you don't want to look behind and say, "Arey, criminal law I could have easily done, my friend is also doing, she's doing quite well." You don't want regrets. You can right now experiment without much cost to yourself. You should. You know, I want to tell you the story of, you know Book My Show, right? The founder of Book My Show, when he started a business, and in the 80s and 90s, government service was the, sort of job to go, okay? Parents used to force, abhi parents force कि अभी startup चालू कर रहा है, अभी corporate कर रहा है. Parents used to say, government job है, तो means it if you're all set. So this founder of Book My Show was, he thought that he founded this really cool company that is solving the theatre ticketing problem. Okay, where people used to go outside theatres and stand in long lines for tickets, unimaginable now, right? So he had a very high impression of himself. He said, until I heard my mother describing my business to her friend on the phone. He said, I overheard my mother telling her friend on the phone कि मेरा बेटा तो कुछ नहीं, वो ब्लैक में जो करते हैं ना थिएटर के बाहर, वो इंटरनेट पे करते हैं. So parents, you have to understand, I love my parents and all of that. Parents always want the best for you, but they're not living the same time as you are. So I'm not saying take an unbridled risk, go blind. If you are interested in criminal law and there are visible risks, you should work with a criminal lawyer, see whether you have the stomach for it, and then decide. But don't not. Yeah.
What is your thought process when you are writing a proper research?
I told you, I start with the what is the proposition that I'm trying to convince the reader about? and 3 reasons why I think that proposition is true. I don't think number of judgments you cite matter. That's my humble opinion. Actually, a lot of judgments pretty much say the same thing, especially on constitutional law and freedom of what is reasonable restriction to trade, what is reasonable restriction on freedom of speech. A lot of them say the same thing. You cite one, you cite the other. Okay? So it's not about how many judgments you cite, it's about the logical clarity of your argument. What is the proposition and what are the 3 reasons you believe that proposition is true? I think that's a well-structured piece. No, 1 second, yeah.
Ma'am, I just wanted to ask that we were just talking about corporate and the criminal thing. So usually people feel that corporate is a more lucrative field, but what about people who want to go for something like judge exams or something? So what is your opinion on it? That is corporate field what it seems like it's very lucrative? Is it that lucrative, or we should just go with judge exam also?
So I don't think lucrative is the defining criteria. It's not about, we no longer live in an India where prospects are free. Okay, so when we started out, my mother used to ask, iske career prospects kya hai? I don't think it's a good question anymore. You have to see what you are curious about and what you're passionate about. I know I'm repeating myself. Maybe if you're passionate enough, into being a judge, you will anyway do better than what you would have done as a corporate lawyer. So there is no one single answer for all. There is no one correct career for all, even from a prospects perspective. It entirely depends on what you are. Suppose you are really interested in labor law. Suppose you are really interested in, asylum law. Then would corporate make sense for you, however lucrative it is? I think you'll stuck as a corporate lawyer if you're good at something else. This is a 3-idiot story. I don't know why I'm repeating it. So you have to see what interests you more. It doesn't matter what is lucrative or not. To answer your question in short, is corporate law a more lucrative career? On an average, maybe it's possible. But if you're going to suck at it, believe me, you'll leave it after 10 years. And then there's no money at all anymore.
So basically I'm more into the philosophical aspect of law, like the why questions. But we are not living in the times of Plato and Aristotle. So you can't just go on to the road and talk about yourself. So what you say on that?
I think legal philosophy is a very UK field. If you're really interested in that, what you should aspire for is getting into Oxford, for example. Okay, that is where legal philosophy, history is taught in a systematic way. I'm not saying there's no scope for legal philosophy in India. I think there is. But you have to then learn from the best and come back. If India is where you want to be. Because frankly, a lot of legal philosophy questions in the UK might have been exhausted. Whereas India may have more scope to explore more. But I'm not sure there's enough opportunity to be trained in legal philosophy in a very, very rigorous way compared to what you would see abroad. I don't think you should give it up as a dead field. I think legal philosophy is going to be the field in the next maybe 15 years, 20 years. Because if you relate legal philosophy to questions like driverless cars, it is a legal philosophy question. Can you hold a machine liable for criminal breach or for criminal? It's a legal philosophy.
And even a robot was given live version, like Sophie was given live version in Saudi Arabia. She's a robot, but she's a legal citizen.
So at what point does a robot start becoming entitled to the same rights as citizens, right? So I think legal philosophy is huge, but I don't think there are enough places in India that teach it. So you've got to find the right place. Okay, are we done? Okay, good. All right, thanks everyone for listening patiently, and I hope answered at least some of your questions.
First of all, I would like to thank Bhargavi ma'am for the amazing and insightful session. I'm sure each of us will take something which is useful and advantageous from today's session. I would also like to thank Dr. Ravi Saxena for his contribution towards the event. So you made sure that the event would be conducted throughout all the adversities you have faced in previously as well as this time.
Lastly, I would like to thank the audience for being part of today's session. Without you all, this session wouldn't be complete. Anand looks forward to seeing you all in upcoming session. Now I would like to invite upon Dr. Ravi Saxena to present token of appreciation to Bhargavi ma'am.
Yes, I'm going to keep on working. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Thanks.